Hi there and welcome. In this mini-series tutorial of 3 videos, I'm going to show you how to implement custom validation on Vue. We're going to apply the custom validation on 2 forms, a sign-up form and a login form. First, we're going to focus on the sign-up form, and then we'll reuse our code and implement the validation on the login form as well. You'll find in the description a link to the GitHub repo where you can find the starter code with the UI ready for you to focus only on form validation. In case you want to follow along, clone the repo, make sure you check out to the starter branch. You just have to run both the npm install and npm run serve commands. You can pause the video and go ahead and do that. I'll be working on the finished branch. In this branch, you'll find the finished project, in case you want to take a look. And remember, make sure you work on the starter branch. We will start working on the signup.vue file. So, the first step here is binding the input fields with our data. And in this form, we have 3 input fields. One for the name, another for the email, and the last one for the password. In our data, I'll create a form data object. And inside this object, I'll create the name, email, and password properties, and set their initial value to null. Let's bind our data with our inputs by using the vModel directive on each field. Let's also add a submit form method. Inside this function is where you will perform a post request with the form data. But I'll just add an alert message here. And now, let's add a submit event to the form element. Pass the submit form method we just created. And don't forget to add a prevent modifier to the submit event in order to prevent a browser reload when the form is submitted. So now, let's start implementing the validation. What I'm going to do is create an if statement, and its condition will be a validate form method that will either return true if the form is valid or false otherwise. Let's create the validate form method, where all of our validation logic will live. First, we're going to make all of our fields required. So we will add an if statement for each field, checking if the field is empty or not. If it is empty, we push an error message string like name is required to the errors list array, which, by the way, we haven't created yet. So let's create it. Now, let's do the same for email and password. At the beginning of the function, let's reset the errors list array. So on every validation, we have an empty array to push error messages. And at the bottom of the function, we add another if statement. Here, we check whether the errors list array is empty or not. So, if its length is equal to 0, we return true. And finally, let's update the static HTML error list in the template and use a v-for to loop through each error in the errors list array. Let's save our code, go to the browser. If we click the sign up button with the input fields empty, we can see an error for each input. If I type my name, you can see it only shows the error messages for the corresponding empty fields. And the same goes for email and password. It successfully shows the alert message. So far, everything is working as expected. In the next video, we'll add a couple more validations to our form, specifically email and minimum length validation.